September 1st, 1983, dawn. In a surprising, urgent news, people around the world were devastated by the shock and tragedy. How could this be? Is this the viciousness and barbarism of communism?
Soviets had fired upon a defenseless
Korean Air's 007 plane carrying 269 passengers and crew members over Sakhalin was shot down by missiles by Soviet fighters. At that time, the world's press was concerned that the Soviets were using KAL-007 civil aircraft. While they were reporting that the catastrophe, the shoot-down took place, the South Korean government could not protest against the Soviet Union, nor could it defend the interests of its neighbors. They were just giving a close look. At that time, true parents asked Dr. Jung Ho-suk to carry out a national victory over communism movement. This direction was the beginning of the Victory over Communism movement and the CARP movement in 50 states in the United States. About 49 anti-Soviet and anti-communist uprisings were held nationwide. The barbaric inhumanism of the Soviet Union could be seen on a national level, and protests against massacres, atrocities, and genocides began and spread to all parts of the United States.
Deepest sympathy to Mrs. MacDonald and the other relatives who suffer from the Soviet massacre of Korean Airline number 7. Association for the Research of Principle, whose inspiration is Reverend Sun Myung-moon. American people, wake up!
In addition, major American magazines and media outlets called for the anti-Soviet movement throughout CARP. In the Washington Post, it was reported as a front-page story. Our CARP condemnation rally was held at the U.S. Capitol and the United Nations headquarters. There was a major upsurge, and the U.S. government took a hardline policy toward the Soviet Union economy. This was a success and created the foundation for President Reagan to be re-elected. It took a lead and played a big role throughout.
The voice of conservatism must make itself heard in the media. It isn't always easy. It wasn't easy when the paper's founder, Dr. Moon, first began the Washington Times.
After that, head-wing ideology and head-wing thought lectures, and as well as CO/VOC activities in the U.S., spurred it even further. Meanwhile, for the collapse of the Berlin Wall, true parents went to Berlin, West Virginia in August 1987 and created the World University Federation. Despite constant threats of bombings from the communist regime, Hyo Jin-moon put his life on the line and went towards the Berlin Wall. Leading the city march with East and West German youth and students, they communicated the vision of peace that true parents advocated. In front of the world's press and media outlets, Hyo Jin-moon made a speech directed at Soviet General Mikhail Gorbachev, demanding the removal of the Berlin Wall. Students from many countries around the world came together to shout for the removal of the Berlin Wall. This was established as the first great event. 2 years later, on November 19th, 1989, the symbol of the East-West Cold War, the Berlin Wall fell, and Germany was reunified after 45 years of division.
Марш боевой техники времен Великой Отечественной войны
during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and the United States sharply confronted each other. In April 1990, 6 years later, in April 1990, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who had declared the fall of the Soviet Empire and declared the end of communism, entered Moscow, the heart of the Soviet Union, and held the Moscow Conference. 600 journalists from all over the world, 41 national diplomats came to this event, where more than 1,000 people came to hear Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon, who delivered a paradoxical and powerful principled message. Refer to the speech of Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon on the screen.
무엇보다도 무신론에 입각한 공산주의의 위협은 가장 심각하며 이 시간에도 도처에서 침식에 들어오고 있습니다.
Also in the Kremlin with Mikhail Gorbachev, Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Han Hak-ja Moon held a historical private meeting. At the private meeting, Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon spoke in the presence of Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, someone in the highest level of the Communist Party, who views religion as an atrocity, and said, "All we need is love," and asked him to believe in God. Basically, he said something that no one else would dare say. Secretary Gorbachev looked a little surprised and smiled, but he listened to various talks by Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon and accepted his words. We also invited 3,000 Soviet youth to the United States to participate in these talks. The talks ended with a lot of dialogue, including expression that they would educate on the value of democracy and freedom to help the Secretary General and deal with the crisis of the country. Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon was able to see the situation in the Soviet Union with foresight and deep insight, and saw a threat that there would be a military coup in the Soviet Union a year later due to military and political unrest at the time. After that, we took 3,000 Soviet students to the United States and gave them special education. No matter what, we had to finish the education within a year, he emphasized. At that time, student exchanges between the United States and the Soviet Union were around 7 or 8 people a year at the most. Because of that situation, we could not even imagine taking a number like 3,000 people. But as the providence of God works through the true parents, with absolute faith in the mission given by true parents, we left the Soviet Union, putting our lives on the line. With such a heart, we did our best. Constant surveillance and control by national intelligence agencies, including the Soviet KGB and the US CIA. Even under observation, our education reached a total of 3,500 people in 27 workshop areas. It successfully ended in early August 1991. And by the way, in August 1991, a few days after the training was completed, an unprecedented military coup provoked the Soviet Union. Tanks rushed into the middle of downtown Moscow, controlling and suppressing citizens due to the provocation of senior national officials and the military due to Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of reform and opening up the policies. But the coup miraculously ended in 3 days. More than 3,000 students who had received the best education thanks to true parents came with new hope and vision for the future. They got the courage to create a human shield together with the people from the whole country. The Soviet government later expressed that this gesture was the first of its kind to suppress the coup d'etat. It was officially announced and declared that the Soviet Union would have retreated back to the Stalinist era if it had not been for the 3,000 young people who were educated by Reverend Sun Myung Moon. In this way, true parents did so many things that even the state could not do, and left many achievements, as they accomplished things that no one else in the world could do. They didn't even carry a gun or shoot a missile, yet they could dismantle communism and bring peace. True parents had already seen that a military coup would break out in the Soviet Union a year later, and so urgently ordered the education of 3,000 people, which was something almost impossible. Also, on 21st of December that year, Russia, Belarus, and the Ukraine, presidents of 3 countries, signed an official document agreeing to dismantle the Soviet Union. By announcing Mikhail Gorbachev's resignation from the presidency of the Soviet Union on the 25th, Christmas night, the Soviet Union disappeared into history forever. Even when the whole world was in chaotic situation, Reverend and Mrs. Moon met with Kim Il-sung and held full-scale peace talks. At this meeting with President Kim Il-sung, the issue of unification was discussed with genuine love for the nation. He delivered a message of world peace centered on the Korean peninsula. He confidently preached to the top leaders at the North Korean capital that the Juche ideology was in error.
피는 누구보다 지나갔으니까 말이에요. 그래서 너희들이 좋을 수 있는 찾아가라. 우리 구원해주마. 그럼 다 끝났대요. 그러게 뭐다 하니까 문제가 벌어지지. 남한도 그렇고 말이에요. 북한도 그렇고 말이지. 자기도 정만이 옳다고. 그래서 하는 거죠.
그게 딱 우리 조선민족 제일주의 정신하고도 신통에도 비슷하다고요.
진환원이 있기 전에 진환이 많이 봐야서 한자가 돼. 진환원이 있기 전에 순놈 안무 남자 여자 상대로 되는 이 진화원은 먼저 무엇이느냐 나중에 봤어요. 그다음 경찰에서 할수 있어. 이런 원리를 주고 내가 볼 때 하나님 이용을 하니까 우리는 이런 하나님 보지 않지. 하나님 보야 되고 당신 몸 마음 있어요 없어요? 있나? 마음 있어요 없어요? 있지. 있는데 마음 봤어? 봤어. 또 사랑 있지요 사랑. 사랑 봤어? 보지 못한 그 귀한 것을 하게 됩니다.
그래서 나 오늘 저 문선명 선생이 그 철학이지 사상이지 아주 집약해서 제가 그 말씀해 주셔서 그대를 정확하게 보고를 했어요.
After the peaceful dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1992, they hosted a major divine principle education in the previous Soviet Union. We trained a total of over 30,000 leaders over the course of 1 year.
통일 원리와 문 선생님의 가르침에서 나는 교육자로서 또한 교육 이론의 전문가로서 필요한 많은 아이디어를 얻을 수 있었습니다.
True parents used the words and the principle to save the second generation of the communist bloc. They instructed us to make textbooks and to establish a character education program in Russia, systematized and consulted with the Russian Ministry of Education to provide character education and absolute sex education, to create textbooks such as True Family Values Education and Peace Ideology Education, and to teach elementary school students. They published a total of 8 textbooks for middle, high school,
이
and college
교재는
students.
교사와 부모, 조부모 모두에게 놀라운 발견이며 우리 학생들에게 동기만큼이나 중요한 교재입니다.
Со стороны исторического музея начали движение по Красной площади механизированной колонны.
In November 1993, True Mother managed to proclaim the Word of God at the Kremlin, the heart of Moscow, in a situation where a state of emergency was declared.
I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for welcoming me to your beautiful country.
Then, in March 1994, Gorbachev, who resigned as president of the Soviet Union, visited the home of Reverend and Mrs. Moon in Hannam-dong to express his gratitude to Reverend Dr. Sen-myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who did not hesitate to die to let us know about absolute true love, and he also said he would do his best so that God's providence would progress.